Sarah, I am so happy to have you here today.
I am thrilled to be here. Oh my gosh. It's actually one of my lifelong dreams to be a podcast guest. And I didn't realize it could happen in such a intimate way with someone that I know.
I texted you earlier this week, was like, do you want to come on the podcast? You're like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, why not? Like you have so many stories to share.
It's too good to be true, to be honest. And it's an honor. And like to watch you grow the platform and listen to the other interviews and like your professionalism. And I love talking to you. So any excuse I'll take.
And I find anytime we do a catch-up call, I'm like, damn, we should have recorded this. Like this could have been great.
No,
like recording.
Such good banter. I mean, we talked for an hour before we hit record here.
I know, literally almost an hour. And for anyone who doesn't know this, you and I were thinking about the idea back in 2016 to start a podcast together. I have a Pinterest board for proof of things that I was pinning for ideas. And the podcast world was really just beginning back then.
I know we were probably addicted to Almost 30, wanting to become Krista and Lindsay. Let's be honest.
We still feel that way.
Yes, very much so. Shout out to them. But I remember that too. And like, it's such a natural progression for you to become a podcast host and be asking people like powerful questions. Cause that's what I always appreciate about our friendship is like, you go there and you just hold space so well. And I've always felt like I can be vulnerable with you, but also in this sort of like supportive, nurturing, how do we grow from it kind of way? Like, no wallowing, but enough space to feel it and heal it. And I mean, yeah, I'm just so thrilled that you're here.
You remember, and I feel like I've never told you the story. Maybe I have. I remember the first day I saw you, straight up. I don't
Love
remember
at first sight.
Literally, I don't remember what university class we were in, but because the nature of our university and classrooms, the seats were kind of like in a circle, and I was kind of in the second row looking up, we could see each other. And I just remember, I just felt like you were in on your own little joke within the situation. And anytime like the teacher would say something or someone in the class would answer, you'd be like judging them or like making comments in your head about them. And I could see all the reactions on your face.
Literally, I should never take a poker. I would 100%. You can see every ounce of pain on my face. I bet
there was so much judgment. And I remember seeing you and watching your reactions. And I'm like, I want to be friends with that.
Oh my God. I've come such a long way. But I mean, I think my financial accounting, and there's a lot of room for judgment in that.
So you're probably judging me because I was not paying attention. Well, I want to ask you my classic question that I ask everyone just to get into everything that we want to talk about. So first question, you already know what's coming because you listen to the podcast.
I take notes.
So first question, what are you struggling with currently? And second question, what have you overcome recently?
Okay, love these questions. It's so funny. When I listen to podcasts, including yours, I often write down these questions that interviewers ask and like have them in my back pocket for like when I'm chatting with girlfriends or if we want the topics for like our book club or something. And I'm obsessed with these sort of thought-provoking questions and personal ones.
Makes
like,
you reflect.
Yes. And like, how often does someone ask me something that like causes pause? Oh, wow. Never gave that too much thought. I'm just going through it. But I guess what I would say struggling with, I'm working on, I'm trying to like, put a productive spin on it, but working on is boundaries and really making them a more automatic part of my life instead of this, oh shit, I'm suffering in this domain, I need to set a boundary. It's more like being proactive with them and finding that on like more regularly, more daily basis, checking in with myself. And honestly, a big way that I've been doing that, which is very subtle and probably indetectable on the outside, is that when people ask either for something from me or for like plans or something, I just say like, can I get back to you? Or I will get back to you. And just afford myself that space before I overcommit.
You've done that with me before, and I appreciate it.
Totally. And it's just so much easier and so much more forgiving to everyone involved to just take a pause. And then it's not like me backtracking. Oh, I know I said I would do this, but now I'm going to set this boundary or whatever. And I think like the world of boundaries is such like a hot topic right now. And it can seem really scary if it's like very cut and dry, have those hard conversations. But I think there's ways that we can kind of like cushion or sort of like wade into the water and one step at a time be like, can I get back to you? And then maybe when they circle back, you say yes and or yes but, and just like creating that space. So I'm working on that, and I'm working on that becoming again automatic so that it's not something that I'm constantly like sort of chasing my tail about.
Yeah.
Backtracking 100%.
Do you find people respect the boundary right away or don't even know it's a boundary? They're just respecting kind of you owning that?
That's a really good question. I would say that the right people really respond well or don't even realize that it's a boundary at all because it's just they're on that level as well. But people who might not jive with sort of the direction you're headed in could take it the wrong way, etc. But I mean, I don't think it's very obvious. We always think it's obvious to other people, like, oh, I'm setting a boundary, they're going to freak out. But maybe they don't even notice at all. It just says, can I get back to you instead of, yeah, see you there. Like, it doesn't really matter to them. It matters to you. And that's why you set them.
I find sometimes when people respond to me too quickly, if I'm asking them to do something or asking them for something, I already get a sense that they're probably going to backtrack on this later.
Yes.
I'm like, I would rather you take 2, 3, 4 hours the rest of the day to get back to me.
Yeah, it's so true. I know you're almost like not pre-grieving, but predetermining. You're like, okay, I bet like the day before this meetup or this chat we're supposed to have, they're not going to be able to make it. Now I'm going to be disappointed. And it's almost
I'm already
a self-fulfilling
stressed.
prophecy. Yeah, exactly.
Boundaries is one of the biggest things that I'm working on and learning. And I think in some ways executing really well in real estate. And I've had certain clients that have no intentions of ever respecting those boundaries. And I remember because I always try to take one day off on the weekend just to have a damn life.
Yeah.
And so if I feel like there's a client that like isn't going to respect that boundary, I just say, hey, like I'm fully booked this weekend.
Perfect.
Instead of being like, hey, I take Sundays off, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
because I know they're not going to respect it. I remember this girl didn't even become a client, but she just like could not respect that I had any other clients besides her and didn't like that like I wasn't available at certain times. So right away I just said like, hey, if you're in a rush to see this place or you want to move this process a little faster than I can help you with, more than happy to hand you off to someone else.
Fabulous.
And she was like, no, like I'm good. I can wait until next week. I'm like, it's funny how quick that changed.
Definitely.
Because for me, it's like if I'm going to give in and do whatever she or he wants and let them steer the ship, what's the point of me being in this job in this role?
And you're teaching people how to treat you.
Exactly.
It's so true. And I think with boundaries, I kind of picture it as like I don't want to say a bubble because I'm still obviously very open and all that good stuff. But sort of like I create this sort of environment that I exist in and that I interact in. And by all means, step on in. These are the rules of the game or rules of engagement. And yeah, again, like it honestly filters people in and out of your business, your life, whatever. And I think it's really powerful. And again, it doesn't need to be super scary and it doesn't need to be harsh.
Gain more respect. I've felt people gain more respect, even if it's obvious that I'm setting a boundary.
Yeah.
And the right people, like you said, it always actually turns out better where they gain that respect, where they trust you more. And those are the clients I want to work with more anyways, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like the energy doesn't lie. And especially in your line of work, like it's so important. And again, like if they can't respect your boundary, ultimately they don't respect you, which is like a really hard truth to come to terms with. It's yikes. If this 1 day delay or this me needing a day to myself offends them or harms them,
not the match.
Totally run away. It's like a dating red flag, like bye-bye.
Yep. I know.
Yeah. And I think also too, like when you set boundaries, it inspires people around you to do the same. Again, maybe people don't even realize it is a boundary, but they see like you saying like, I'll get back to you, or I'm going to respond maybe, or I mean, there's so many different ways to set boundaries. But then I noticed some of my friends doing the same. And I'm like, I love them.
So they're learning from you because I'm sure they sense the energy from you where, okay, you have some self-worth, you have life.
Totally. And that I'm human.
Do you find, and I find this as well, as soon as I feel that the other person respected that boundary, respected me, I all of a sudden, maybe not even consciously, start prioritizing them even more anyways.
Yes.
You know?
It's so true. It's so true. Because I don't know. Part of me is like boundaries are vulnerable, but at the same time, they're also protective. But I feel like because setting a boundary and standing up for yourself it can be scary. Let's put it that way. Or it's a bit of a leap, especially if you're not used to it. And when someone kind of catches you in that leap and says, great, I'm so happy for you. I'm so glad for you. I'm happy to respect that request, wish, boundary, however they label it. Yeah, it just really strengthens the trust also. I think it benefits everyone, even if some people are sour, they're not meant to be in this bubble. And yeah.
Where have you shown boundaries in your relationship recently? Because you guys live together, you're engaged. So like the boundaries are probably pretty blurred.
This is a very good question. I mean, I am lucky to be engaged to the most agreeable, kind, gentle,
Good
like
looking.
easygoing, good looking man alive. I feel very, very lucky. So I feel like it's more like him responding to my energy more than
Mm.
anything. But I
Or
think something
maybe in
that,
the beginning of your relationship.
yeah, well, something that's coming up more consciously now is I realized when we lived in Vancouver, he would work on Saturdays because he was working in the movie industry. And I mean, movies that really never sleep. They work like 6 days a week, 16-hour days. And I had Saturdays to myself. And I loved that. And I kind of lost that when we came to Sweden. We were so happy that he was working with us that I lost sight of like, it's nice to have one weekend day to yourself. Saturdays today, I'm spending with you
Oh, I
and
love
doing
it.
my own
And
thing.
where are you
And
both
yeah,
staying?
he's at a friend's like birthday gathering.
Nice.
So yeah, so I think that's even a more like happy boundary to set of like, how can we fill our own cup
Do you
proactively?
find it's hard? Maybe not for you, but I feel like
Mm,
sometimes once you start like living with someone and getting really serious, like getting towards engagement, it's sometimes hard to have your own individual life outside of each other.
yes. Yes, definitely. And I mean, especially moving to a foreign country for someone, you just feel like you get sucked into this hurricane of, I mean, you have to because you have no,
You feel like very dependable on them probably.
totally. And I was like, strong, independent woman. And then here I come to
Not
Sweden.
anymore.
Please call the tax office for me. But
Make this
it
phone call for me.
totally still do to this day. But once I made my first friend that was my own, like not a friend's girlfriend, no one we knew through our network, someone that I met at my Swedish classes, and she's my best friend. Now we're so close that once I met her, it was just like everything in my life got better, which just so it's crazy how having your own life, it just has this trickle down effect. It could be one friend. It just makes you realize like who you are and what's important to you and makes you feel just like self-assured. And that just made a huge difference. And I'm actually very fortunate to have made a lot of new friends over the past year, a lot of expat friends. I think it helped that everyone was stuck in Sweden because of the pandemic. And every time that I make more friends and, do more socializing on my own, yeah, our relationship continues to grow and get better. And
I
yeah,
agree.
it's awesome.
Because I think a lot of people, when you start dating, that person is really attracted to you as an individual before you guys become a couple. And it's very
Hmm.
easy to lose sight of that.
It's so, so true. It's like when we met, we were completely
Separate
like
lives.
separate. Yeah, exactly. Especially for us, like we were 7-year age difference, worked in different industries from different countries, like no mutual friends. We met on a dating app for crying out loud. So we have no overlap. So we were completely independent, separate
There's
entities.
such an
And
attractiveness to that, you know?
yeah, exactly. So I'm very mindful of that. And it feels like we have a really good balance here. I was nervous when you move to a foreign country, especially for someone. When we met in Vancouver, he was there for
He was
work.
living in your country.
Yeah, but he was there for work and we met
Yeah.
after he had started his job. He already had a handful of friends that was growing. And so he had his independence in that way. And he was in Canada for me. So that also relieved
Yeah.
some of the pressure for me. So it really was interesting. My first 6 months here were not glamorous. Let's just say.
Do you think he felt all the pressure of you moving
Yeah.
for him? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he felt more than he verbalized. I think he felt more than he even realized. I think once I started to come out of that funk and make my own friends, etc., then we both realized like, wow, this was a dark cloud hanging over both of us. So this sort of like unspoken dependency and everything. So it
And
only
you're
got
not
better
the
from
type of
there.
person that wants to feel dependent. That's not your best self. That's
No,
your worst self. My worst self.
I know. As a firstborn, I'm like, I'm supposed to be in charge. I'm telling other people what to do. Yeah. So it was like a very humbling experience. And I think it softened me in many, many ways. And that also deepened our relationship is to realize it's okay for one person to, be in their element, the other person to kind of need that dependent dynamic for a hot second, for as long as it takes. And that it also reassures me that we could live elsewhere in the world and make it work. So yeah.
Oh my
All good.
goodness. We can come back to that. Okay,
Yeah.
tell me something that you've overcome recently.
Yes. So this is like the perfect segue because this is exactly what I want to talk about. And in the last year, I've overcome a very big health milestone for myself, which is overcoming my chronic pain that I was still dealing with after 6 years of it. So that was a huge, huge milestone, accomplishment, turning point even. Yeah, it's something I'm super proud of. I'm surprised I never thought it actually would be possible for me. I've overcome lots of other health issues in my life, which I mean could be a book for crying out loud. We don't have to get
I'm
into that
waiting
stuff.
for it.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought that chronic pain was, or let's call it intermittent chronic. So it wouldn't be all day, every day at this phase of my life,
It would
but
be
it would be like,
sometimes and then a lot.
Yes. And it would start and it would last for 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, an hour. Like it was so hard to keep track of. Anyways, having overcome everything else, I thought, okay, chronic pain, maybe that's the thing that I'm left with. And I can live with that because I've overcome other things and, I'm happy in my life and I'm lucky to be able to be active, like able-bodied, all these things that I'm obviously, I mean, a laundry list of things I'm grateful for, which I think happens when you've been through health issues. You're just like happy to be able to breathe, happy to be able to get out of bed, happy to have your energy. So I was like, this intermittent sort of untraceable pain, I can deal with that because I'd also built up obviously resilience over the years. But to overcome that and to also unlock levels of myself that I didn't even know existed is just like mind blowing. And like to caveat for the listeners, it was 100% free. It required nobody else, no money, no intervention, no tools, no foods, no supplements, none of that stuff that we're usually sold on our health journeys. And my mind is just completely blown. I feel like the way I see the world and life and health has completely paradigm shifted in the last year. And that's what I think is like the best thing to share with the listener today. And like, when you're like, what should we talk about? I was like, something that they can take away to bring them hope, actionable items, and put the healing back in their hands, because I was so disempowered for so long. And like the laundry list of interventions or practitioners I saw is actually ridiculous. I look back and I'm like, can I get that money back, please?
Seriously, there should be a clause in the end. Like if you don't actually heal, you'll get 25% back.
Seriously. I mean, chiropractors, acupuncturists, naturopaths, obviously traditional doctors getting like MRIs, CT scans, an osteopath. I mean, any and everyone. I was like, you want my money? Take it. And now I'm just like, I cannot believe also all of these practices that intend to help people and can't, and that the information that I unlocked to help myself is free. And that's insane. And I think it's the next wave of like self-help meets healing, meets, physical health, emotional, mental, all together. So even if one person hears this and goes, wow, I've been in pain, or I've had these undiagnosable or like uncurable or not medically significant things happening, that they could just take a little bit of hope and start on their own path. And just they can just wake up feeling, hopeful tomorrow, because that's the worst part about having chronic anything is that you're just like, here we go again. It's a Groundhog Day. You're like, here we go again. Here we go again. And
do you
I'm a
think
different person.
5 years ago or even a year ago that you would be in this place of this kind of gauntlet?
Never.
Yeah.
Also, like,
thought you were going to live with it for the rest of your life.
This is where I probably will cry, is that I cannot believe that I am getting married this year.
Yeah.
Here come the tears.
Yeah.
I really can't believe it. Like when we met, I was sick beyond the pain. There was other things too, but I was so sick. I even told him quite early, and our relationship, I don't know what my future looks like.
That's so scary.
I don't know. Like,
what was his response to that?
And he said, it's okay. I mean, that's his response to everything. That's okay. And that doesn't make a difference. And it was things like, sort of more traditional conversations you'd have with a partner. I don't know if I can have children, because I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
But it was other things that were more specific to me. Like, I don't know how active I can be. Like, if I can travel. I mean, if I can travel now, I live in Sweden. Like, I don't know if I can travel. I don't know if I can have a job, because I don't know if I can sit at a desk all day, every day. I don't know, like I don't want to say my life expectancy, but that's kind of part of it. It's like,
absolutely.
And how long, or basically quality of life, like how long will I be living a decent enough life to, get out of bed and get the groceries, etc.
And that's a cloud over your head, because you don't want to succumb someone that you're dating to feel like they need to sign up for this.
Exactly. And I was even like, I don't know.
Are you sure?
Are you sure? And I'm not sure if I'm sure about bringing someone else along, because it's so much easier to suffer in silence by myself and just be like, well, this is my thing. It's my life. It doesn't affect anyone else. I mean, it already was affecting obviously like my family to some extent. So I cannot believe, I mean, like to think like I live in a foreign country. I mean, I'm getting married. I ran 10K the other day. All these things that I'm just like, is this real life? And that's all. It's a fucking miracle. Yeah. There's like literally no other way to say it. And I did not grow up religious. If anything, I grew up atheist and very like
your parents are very cool and chill and
sure. Yeah. And my mom grew up Catholic, but like no longer is part of that. So I was definitely like a millennial, like atheist millennial. But based on what's happened to me, I'm like, there has to be something,
Mm.
because I've lived that sort of miracle, whatever you want to call it. And I never would have believed it if it hadn't happened to me personally.
What breaks my heart about chronic pain and those invisible illnesses is it's not clear to the outside world
Oh,
what you're going through. And someone who doesn't have the empathy or respect for you can call your bluff a lot of the times. And I know
yes.
you dealt with that a lot in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Maybe you were internalizing a lot of it because ultimately you're entitled to sick days. But I'm sure just the stress of like how your situation was perceived was pretty stressful. And I mean,
Yeah.
that cycle continues. Like you have stress, you're creating internal illnesses, and it's just this is a never
Exactly.
ending fucking cycle.
Totally. And you would remember then from like fourth year of university, because I guess that was when I was sickest, is it was really hard because I didn't know also who to like let in or tell about this. But again, I looked normal from the outside.
Healthy,
Yeah.
happy, like
And you get compliments like, oh, you look so great. And I'm like, my body is on fire.
yeah,
Like, it's funny because I think about, it depends which doctors you go to. I easily could have ended up with a fibromyalgia diagnosis or a Lyme disease diagnosis or
100%.
lupus or anything, because it was just so
Lyme
non-specific.
was
And
top of mind for me. Like when I hear about Lyme disease, is a lot of the same symptoms as you talk about.
exactly.
That's
So, I mean,
really scary.
and it's, yeah, so it was really hard because I felt no one can, do I want people to be able to see that I'm sick? Not really. But do I want people to think that I'm completely normal? Not 100%. And
What's the
it's
in between?
exactly. And like some of my like closer friends didn't know for a while. And then I would have these breakdowns of just saying like, I am hanging by a thread.
Yeah.
Like my body is constantly pretty much on fire.
And you
And
can't
I
explain that to someone. Like you
know,
can't show them acne. You can't show them rashes or
right.
bruises or, there's nothing physical to show and prove it. And I think that's what a lot of people with chronic illnesses and Lyme disease and stuff like that struggle with. Is they're stressed about proving to people that they're sick.
Absolutely. And it makes you, again, yeah, it kind of internalizes it to this degree that's extremely unhealthy where you're like, I know I'm not crazy.
Mhm.
I feel crazy. I beg, I would like someone just show it on the outside, like a rash, something come out. I want
Yeah.
like a broken bone. At least you can see that on a scan. I felt like it was like my word against the doctor's word or someone else's word. It just, yeah, you just kind of drive yourself
And the
insane.
fighting kills you.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, being your own advocate, people always talk about that for people who are especially chronically ill. And that is a full-time job. No one reminds you that while you are holding down a regular job and, navigating relationships, especially when you're like in your early 20s or haven't done all these sort of things before, on top of that, specialists, following up with these people, getting those kind of tests, listening to podcasts for hours, reading as much content as you can because you just feel it crazy.
Mhm.
It's, yeah.
How do you ultimately prove and get diagnosed with chronic pain, though?
I
Like,
mean,
do you just self-diagnose, or do you actually go get that stamp of approval of a physician or a doctor?
I think it really depends which sort of system you're navigating and what your doctor, I don't know, a lot of these syndromes, like even things like IBS and stuff, it's a diagnosis of exclusion. So it's like, well, you don't have this, but you're in pain every day. So let's call it chronic pain. And I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily that I was diagnosed with chronic pain, but I identified, I'm like, I have pain and it's pretty much all the time.
Mm.
So that's how I describe what I'm going
And
through. I
that's
have
what the word
chronic pain.
chronic means.
Yes, exactly. And definition of chronic, because that was the only way to sort of communicate to what I was experiencing. It's not like I hurt. It was like I
Yeah.
have chronic pain. There's no respite from that.
What was so pivotal about last year, though, that you finally started, like, self-diagnosing yourself, taking matters into your own hand?
Yeah. So I had come a long way up until last year with, again, like sort of like I could write a book about all the other sort of things I was going through, but my pain still persisted. And what's how it showed up. Well, when I first got sick or like my health started to go downhill about 7 years ago, was that I had pain like all the time. And it was like a burning pain from my like low back on the left side, sometimes up to my shoulder, sometimes my pelvis. It was always on the left side. And through my health journey, I had managed to get that down to not being chronic. It might come up when I was stressed or if I had just like exercised really hard or sort of a change in movement. But I just told myself again, this is a small price to pay. I can walk, I can ride my bike and no consequence. But anytime I'd like sort of up the intensity or again, be out of my comfort zone, it would come up and I would just feel like I'd feel haunted a bit. I was like, I've come so far. You know, I live abroad. I've really proven a lot of things to myself, but here it is. And it's crazy. So do you know Ruthie Lindsay? She has a big story about, she's a survivor of like chronic pain and things like this. She had a really bad car accident. She had a wire poking her brain, all these things.
Wow.
Anyway, I've heard her interviewed many different places and she mentioned, oh my God, it's like miracles, right? She mentioned this website and woman, and the website was called www.thecureforchronicpain.com. And I was like, excuse me? And I like looked into it and it's this woman, her name is Nicole Sachs, and she's like I wrote down licensed clinical social worker in the US. And she spreads the message that repressed emotions can cause chronic conditions, chiefly chronic pain, but also a myriad of other things. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of open to anything.
At that point, you've went through everything. You're like, just
Oh,
show me
yeah.
something more that I can, maybe this is the cure, or maybe this is the link to me figuring all this out.
Sure. And like this woman, Nicole, she's fantastic. I mean, she has a great Instagram account. She has great podcasts. She has great interviews on other people's podcasts. She has tons of resources on her website. But basically, her trademark sort of, let's call it a healing modality. I don't know, for lack of a better description, is called journal speak. So it's a way of using the written word. I mean, I use a computer, other people might handwrite, to release suppressed emotions that are causing chronic symptoms. And I was just like, fuck it. Like, I have nothing.
Did that resonate right away? Or you're in the mindset of like, fuck it, let's just try one more thing?
A big facet of her sort of work is that belief is chief. Like, it's the first step. And so I said, okay, I really need to believe this. I actually marinated on it for a while. I think I found out about her. I kind of thought about it, listened to some podcasts, sort of like, okay. And I said, if I'm going to start this, I need to believe. So I was like, okay, let's just give this a shot. You can't half believe to start because then you will self-sabotage through the process, if that makes sense.
100%.
So I was like, okay, well, this can't kill me also. I'm taking an experimental drug.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, I've journaled as a kid or whatever. Like I'm familiar, I'm comfortable. And she prescribes 20 minutes of journaling, preferably in the morning. I find that that's best for me as well. And so basically it's like a free write, but it's everything you can't say out loud. So it's not Dear Diary, today I went to the coffee shop, or yesterday my husband yelled at me.
I'm grateful for my husband.
Totally.
I'm grateful for my great friends. You're not telling everything that you want to actually say.
No. And also I will note, when you're in therapy, you're usually also not saying the ugliest parts of what
I don't trust people enough, not even a therapist.
No. And this is basically 20 minutes. I turn my computer on airplane mode so that it's not going to upload to any cloud or like someone else on another device.
Because I think people are still worried. Yes.
Yes. So airplane mode, set a timer for 20 minutes, flip it over so you're not checking, and let it rip. And the stuff that comes out, it's going to be ugly. If you're throwing up. You're throwing up all the things you never could say out loud. You couldn't even say to a best friend. You can't say to your spouse. The things that you just really need to get off your chest, and you quite literally get them out of your body. And it's catharsis to the highest level. And the thing is, I thought that I was like a very emotionally aware person. I've been in and out of therapy as needed throughout my life. I have no stigma.
You've been to therapy as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I felt
therapy
like I had
is not
tools.
a new thing to you.
No, not at all. And like being aware of my emotions. Again, I used to journal actually as a kid. Like instead of reading before bed, I'd write in my journal. And I think that was quite comforting for me. But this journal speak with this purpose in mind is so different from that. And it's kind of like a language that you have to learn. That's what Nicole, the founder, talks about, that it's a swear words, horrible things, nastiness, it's the sludge. Basically.
Why did it resonate with you right away, though, where you thought, ooh, this could be the answer?
I think I really built my beliefs by listening to like testimonials and reading her website and listening. She has amazing YouTube sort of instructions about it. She'll kind of walk you through the pitfalls. And that's what I hope like anyone listening to this is, wait, what? I mean, thecureforchronicpain.com, she has so many great resources. She does not care if you take her courses for extra support or not. Like you can do this entirely for free. I mean, I've literally haven't spent a cent to get to where I am.
A funny correlation where the moment you stop spending money on all these modalities is the one that works.
100%. And I just think it's so aligned with the sort of self-empowerment aspect of it, is that there's no money to be made. There's only like healing to be gained. And again, there's like courses and things for people who want extra support or want to be part of the community more, or retreats that she hosts and whatnot. And I've never done any of them because I haven't needed them. I was always thought in the back of my mind is, you know, if my pain comes back or if I'm feeling doubtful, maybe I will invest. And sometimes investing some money helps people to also commit, believe, whatever it takes.
Feel
but I was like willing to see how far it went on my own. And I don't want to say the finish line because it's an ever evolving road and
but
process.
You feel the changes all the time.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like it got a bit tricky though.
To wrap everyone's head around kind of what we're saying, so the modality, for lack of a better word, is called journal speak. And essentially, so the idea of writing in your journal is a long tail of people doing that. But I think what a lot of people are worried about, me included. So two things on why I'm not really into journaling. One, I think way faster than I write.
Yeah.
And then secondly, if I write this on paper, it's concrete. This can be found.
Yep.
I know one thing and why I understand this journal speak so much. I remember me and a couple friends, we did this a couple summers ago where we would write down kind of like what we were thinking and just kind of the struggles we were going throughout the week. And we would share them because they weren't as ugly as you were willing to share. And then we would burn the paper.
So nice.
You know? Yeah. So I get that catharsism.
Yeah. Catharsis, yes.
And I get it. So you can either write it, but you choose to type it on your computer. You're putting yourself on airplane mode so it doesn't accidentally save everywhere. And you're essentially typing everything you're thinking or repressing for 20 minutes, and then you're deleting it all.
Yes.
Right?
And I was gonna say that brings it all home is that first, yes, typing for me follows my speed of thought also. I mean, essentially, whether you're typing or handwriting, or some people actually speak it out loud, that's kind of not a 2.0, but sort of like a different flavor. If someone is really maybe some people are physically incapable of writing for many reasons, could be also because of their pain or their condition they're dealing with. So I don't want to gloss over that, but you're slowing down this sort of like rapid fire into typing or handwriting. I find typing more satisfying. I can get like more words out in the 20 minutes than I would with a handwritten. And also I've done the handwriting a couple of times and I burned it in the sink. And my boyfriend came home and he was like, the entire building smells like smoke. What is going on in here? And I was like, just burning my feelings.
Yeah, what have you suppressed?
Exactly. And yes, the most important part that separates us from regular journaling is that you will either rip or burn a piece of paper or shred it. Or if it's typed, you will select all and delete. It's not for anyone to read.
This is mind-blowing to me. This is so simple that it's almost like, are you sure this is what's helping you?
Girl, I know it's actually crazy, and Nicole walks people through like how to sort of understand what to write about. She has 3 lists that people make in the beginning.
What are those?
Yeah. So the first list is childhood, like early life. So you could just write down the sort of like major events from your childhood that like come to mind off the top. And then there's another list that's like daily life. So that's more like adult stuff. It could be like, fuck the guy at the post office or something. Like it can be silly stuff like that. Or it could be like, I think I want a divorce or whatever.
Right.
And
even
the third
if you don't want to, saying it out loud gets you to start thinking about it, thinking, okay, maybe that's a little aggressive. But if you say that to a friend out loud and you're just, because you know the idea, there's so much catharsis with venting to a friend.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I don't actually mean any of that. Just like saying it out loud really makes me think about, okay, do I want that? But if you say that to a friend, of course you trust them and stuff, but like, you're going to slip somewhere. It's going to come back to your spouse, you know? So that's why I'm obsessed with this journal speak.
Yeah. And the third one is personality. So it could be like the traits that you have that cause sort of like friction in your life. So a lot of people come to this being like, but I'm a perfectionist or a people pleaser. I mean, we all have elements of this, but you could just write these sort of like character traits that seem to cause, again, like friction in your life or seem to cause you trouble or like maybe problems with other people. I've been told that I'm bossy or difficult or whatever. Like those could just be like the words that you put down. Yeah, I know. I'm like, firstborn. Sorry.
You're like, oh, you mean I know what I want? Okay.
Right. Or it could be another way I like to think of it is like, it could be like names that you were called or words that were used to describe you that triggered you. It could be like your spouse could be like, oh, you've been so lazy today. And you could fly off the handle, be like, lazy, what do you mean? Whereas another person could be like, haha, yeah, I love the couch. So those sort of like trigger words. I think also they would be described as like shadow words in other forms of psychotherapy. So anyways, it's these 3 lists. And then you just...
difficult would be one for me because I'm just a very disagreeable person.
And I love that about you.
Yeah. But that's always kind of got me in trouble in kind of typical jobs. My parents probably hate it.
I love, but you're such a strong, independent, only child. Did to be this.
But I've heard those words used in a negative connotation.
Yeah, exactly. Like to one another person.
Words, oh, you're an only child, like you're spoiled, or all you think about is yourself. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes I do.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. These are the 3 lists. And then, so what I have done in the past, I mean, I kind of flow in and out of how I do this, but is make like a note in my phone with the 3 lists and lock the note with a password. So that there's like no excuse. I always have it. It always has an item on. I can like use the little check bubbles, which is very satisfying. But you could open your note and you pick one at random, whatever seems like resonate with you that day. And you could even say, fuck the list. I'm going to work on what happened yesterday kind of thing. Something that charged you, something that someone's bothering you. You know, often these like little annoyances that come up, or it could be something big like I failed a test, or I'm worried about XYZ. So you kind of get a rhythm of what's really pressing. But if it's a day where you're like, I don't really know, you could look and be like, okay, something from childhood, here we go.
Do you find it's productive to keep that as a daily activity, or do you mostly do it when you feel triggered?
That's a very, very important question.
Do you take days off? Do you do it every single day?
At the beginning, it's important to do it pretty much as often as possible, meaning 1, maybe 2 times a day, as many days a week as you can, and trying to require it as a daily practice really helps set the tone. And also, if you want to be, if you're going to be digging the sludge out of your psyche, you got to really commit, because you will not start to see the seismic shifts until you get enough of it out.
Are you shocked of like what came out for you?
Oh my God. My mind is completely blown.
Do you judge yourself for what's come out?
No, I think at first it's shocking, but to me, it was like shocking in a healing way of being like, oh my God, that was in there. And sort of that recognition. And also Nicole recommends that you can do a 10-minute meditation after the 20 minutes of writing and pairing that. And I will admit, I haven't done the meditation. I've maybe done the meditation like 20% of the time or less, but I could understand how it could be really helpful if what you talk about is extremely traumatic or it scares you or surprises you. Whereas I've had more recognition when it's come out. I've been like, oh, wow, snap. That was deep.
Yeah.
But the meditations are delightful.
I bet.
So, just to sit down in silence for 10 minutes after, especially after the amount of words that come out in 20 minutes when you're just sitting with nothing else to do, it's quite profound, like contagious. So
obviously I'm not asking you to share anything. Sure. The idea of journal speak is you're saying things that you don't feel comfortable sharing. But what are the main topics that you feel that were so suppressed, or areas of your life that you're like, oh, I've now understood how this is happening, or this has been suppressed, and that's what led to me releasing this chronic pain?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I am quite open about like at a surface level describing like what I've uncovered. But I want to caveat too, also for like people who don't know me personally, I haven't had a textbook traumatic life at all. Like I had a great childhood, very loving, very engaged parents, a sister who's now one of my best friends. I have an amazing partner. I've had many privileges in my life. So I think that might have been the hardest thing for me to come to terms with when I started, was thinking like, well, who am I to complain? And that's what a lot of people think, right? I don't have a capital T trauma to look back on, but I do have an accumulation of those small T traumas. And I like
that becomes a capital T.
Sure. It becomes a nerve pain in your back if not looked at. And I had this sort of accumulation, I guess, of these little T traumas. And I like to think of trauma as something unexpected happening in your life. And I don't know where I heard that, but it like really turned on a light bulb for me. It could be like when you're small, it could be like someone jumping out of a closet to surprise you like for fun, but that could be traumatic because it's unexpected. It could be, like
the death of a loved one.
Yes, it can be as big as that. And it can be as small as just, again, being sort of like startled by something, or, something going the way you didn't expect it to, or et cetera, et cetera. So we all have trauma because like we are surprisable and,
What are some examples of the
living in life.
small T traumas as you described?
Yeah, I mean, well, I can touch upon things that really unlocked for me. There's a tip I have if people are like, I don't really know what to write about, and it feels like it's more about like other people, or like being angry or frustrated or sad about other people.
Triggered?
Is it yes, capital T from some people.
Mhm.
No, but it's like writing the letter you'll never send.
Mhm.
So it's dear so and so. Insert, friend, ex-boyfriend, a boss, whatever, and just letting her rip was
You
incredible.
have
And
so many
also,
ideas.
yes. And the thing is, I would recommend to everyone, include the people closest in your life, even if you love them completely and they've never done anything wrong, to express in private the things that you can't say to their face and get that out, because we all build resentments, whether we know it or not. And you might be like, I could never say something bad about my like family members. It's well, given 20 minutes silence and total privacy, it's a safe space. And I find that actually doing that, especially when it's like about people who are like still in my life and close to me and whatever, has really improved my relationships with them. So that's like another added benefit. Not only am I feeling better, getting better, gaining energy, less pain, feeling lighter, quite literally, I'm interacting with people in a way more genuine way because I'm not running this subconscious, don't get mad, this and that, forget about that, don't bring up this. It's insane. Like my relationships are just catapulted in the last year. It's
And we
so
all
cool.
have those resentments, like you said. Love our partners, we could love our best friends, we could love our parents, but you can't name me one person that there's not some aspect that bugs me about them. And it's a lot of it is projection, and I feel like maybe the journal speak is allowing you to recognize a lot of that triggers and projection. Do you find your relationships are better because you've almost got that venting and resentment out that you maybe don't even resent that about them anymore?
Yeah, I think like when you unburden yourself of all these, again, it's a subconscious emotions, programming, or just sort of like chit chat that's happening. You can't hear it, but it's happening.
Mhm.
Like when you get rid of that, you do stop projecting because there is nothing to project. And
Right.
also, I feel like people seek to forgive other people. And I have a different understanding or interpretation of forgiveness as like that arises naturally when you have healed on your side of the street. They're just, you're not plugged into that anymore. You're not bruised anymore. So when they poke you, you're like, okay, cool, whatever. Not, oh, that hurt, because you've healed and you've cleaned up that sort of like garbage that's accumulated on your side of the street from resenting people, from holding grudges, from unsolved, unexpressed emotion, whether it's rage or sadness or frustration or guilt or shame. That's a big one. It's quite amazing how, like, it's so funny how something you can do in private can actually extend into your public life.
Do you have any examples of the people in your life noticing a change in you and asking you, "What did you do differently?"
That's a really good question. I will say that I don't know if it was conscious, but like my mom and I have been coming so much closer in the last few months. Like that actually also makes me emotional. I think it's so cool. Hi, mom, if you're listening.
We'll
um,
be sending this to her.
exactly, exactly. And I wonder if sort of that came to be because I was really working on myself and the way I relate to other people and creating like space in my heart and not running these sort of, yeah, background tracks in my head and everything like that, that I think my heart is opening and that's really showing up. So definitely. And I think Ollie, my partner, has noticed a difference in me too, just feeling a bit less burdened. And I mean, the fact that I'm no longer in pain has really affected his life as well, because it used to be this sort of roller coaster I would ride and he would watch, like, what's about to happen. So yeah, and when you feel better, like it is noticeable. And I did, some people didn't know that I lived with chronic pain, especially more recently in my life. But I think I am lighter and more bubbly. And maybe people now just think that that's my all the time personality and it is who I genuinely am. But I was really suppressed for like 7 years of
Right.
dealing with pain and just like putting on a happy face. And that actually something I also want to point out is I think that most people who deal with chronic conditions are happy, kind, positive, forgiving, loving, open-hearted people. And that's not to pump my own tires, but like to the outside would look like such a nice person, like girl next door, et cetera, et cetera. And that's because we aren't feeling the other spectrum of emotions that every human feels or encounters. And it's up to us to find an outlet for that and also to tap into it. It's hard to admit, like, I think a lot of women, especially, were so okay or accepted to be sad, but a lot of us are just fucking mad.
We're so angry.
We're angry, and there's no societally acceptable way to let that out. And if we do, we are
And when we
crazy.
do, we're crazy. Yes.
Exactly. Or we're jealous, or we're spiteful, or we're bitchy, or we're,
And it's
I
just
don't know.
because it's been piled on for so long, then it turns into crazy. Because it is
Totally.
a little crazy by the time
Yes.
it comes out.
Absolutely. If you're repressing like years of anger, when it comes out, better like run for the hill.
Well, I know my partner says all the time, he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Where did this just come from? And I've had to say, I'm like, no, I've been thinking about this for a month. He's like, that's not fair. Like
Exactly.
you need to bring it up when it's happening. And obviously it's a me thing where I'm not comfortable bringing it up yet. And I almost let myself get over it in my head or fight through it in my head and then bring it up. But yeah, from the other side, that's not fair at all.
Exactly. And
When you
like,
explode, they're thinking, where the hell is this coming from?
I mean, and think about the amount of energy. And so if you're not exploding, it's being pushed down quite literally. And it's
And the
expressing
interesting
itself.
thing, if you're
Yeah.
feeling it in your back all the time, like you're
Yep.
pushing it down.
Quite literally. And I mean, a lot of people feel it in their pelvis, or they could feel fibromyalgia, non-specific pain, or it could be even irritable bowel syndrome, or it could be, I mean, the list of diseases and syndromes we don't have cures for is insane. And how many people are put into this, like,
There's a reason why we don't. Like it's not something we can put in our body to fix.
yes, exactly. It's funny because Nicole Sachs, the founder, says like the problem isn't in your head, but the solution isn't in your body. And I mean, all these truth bombs, I'm just like, yes, yes. And it just leads you down this trail of belief because
Because you keep resonating
Yes.
with things, you're like, oh, this is the trail to keep
definitely.
going
And
down.
I've had my ups and downs. I've had my doubts. I've had my dark nights of the soul. I've had everything in between. Like it's not a linear path, like everything in life. It's not linear. Even if in hindsight, you can make it into this straight average, it's not linear whatsoever. And it's funny because in January, actually over Christmas, I was in a ton of pain. And this is about a year into doing the
This
journaling.
past Christmas or the one
Yes.
before?
Yeah, this past Christmas. So I was a year
Right.
into my journaling journey. I was like considered myself pain free. I was like living my life. I was in pain for 2 weeks.
Do you think?
Pain. I think I was
Christmas?
right. I think I was probably homesick. It was that time of year when you're with family. I mean, we were fortunate enough to be with the family we have in Sweden. But I think there was just a lot going on, and I was probably feeling quite sad about it. I don't actually know exactly what was going on, but something was happening. And it's no coincidence I had been more lax about my journal speak process because I was like, oh,
Time
I'm
the
good
holidays.
now.
Yeah.
Totally. And then in January, finally, we like come back from visiting family and going away to go skiing. And I was like, I'm going to break. This is crazy. I thought I was pain free. It's all a lie. Like I was dark night of the souling it completely. And I was talking to my mom on the phone because we started to like chat every week now. And I cried for 3 hours straight.
While
3
on the phone
hours.
with her?
Yes. I was
Wow.
sobbing. I had on FaceTime. I was like, she could see. I was just letting her rips, literally like I was a child. I was just sobbing and I wasn't
Well, you
really
still are the
vocalizing.
child.
Exactly. Like I was a little child. And I was sobbing and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing and wailing and talking and this and that. And I don't think I was making sense. I had, snot on my face and just like, I was in complete despair. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm in so much pain. I hate this. I have tried everything. I thought I was better. It was like, yeah, again, it was all a lie. I was just imagining it, blah, 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 blah. Cried until I literally couldn't cry anymore. And I think that's also an important caveat. It's like, often we don't feel our feelings to completion. We just say like, okay, I'm going to suck it up and like go back to my desk. Cried and cried. Like literally, it was like my body was like, okay, we're done. We physically have no more energy to cry. It was like, it's almost that point where you start laughing. You're just like, oh my God, I'm so empty in the best way. And I slept through the night and I woke up and I haven't been in pain since.
Wow.
And that was a few months ago. And now I'm like, back to on the belief train and knowing that it's It's so linked. It's so crazy. And to have that experience. So yes, journaling can be the key for you, but it also could be like that you need to express it in a different way. And I think that journaling is the foundation. I think that's the only way to really excavate, especially the things that are super hard to verbalize or to say out loud to someone. But there's nothing wrong with a good cry.
Oh, it feels good all the time.
It really does. And it was so profound. I mean, again, another miracle was like me being in pain, having a giant cry, and then it going away, me being like, oh my God, it is so obvious now. There is no doubt in my mind, because when you journal, you're kind of like, again, am I sort of imagining this? This is too good to be true. But when you physically emote and realize that that's what's been living in your body, it's magic, right? Like in the worst and best way.
Did it almost because you said earlier, like, I've never been a religious person, and you alluded to that it feels like a bit of a miracle. Where you almost like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, I've seen the light of God here.
Honestly, yes. And there's been a few times in the last couple of years that I've been like, it can't just be a coincidence that I
I
find
see
this
why all
work.
these religious
Yeah,
people are so religious now.
sure. But it's so empowering to be like, it's like these realizations that always lead me back to myself. It's like, yes, having it crying and the next day waking up without pain could be considered a miracle. But then I'm like, wait, I'm in the driver's seat of this miracle. And
Mm.
how amazing is that? To be like, I'm creating this miracle in my life. Like I am healing myself
Mm.
through release. Isn't that profound?
Profound is the perfect word for it.
Yeah. And that there's no God out there who I have to pray to. I mean,
Follow by their rules.
you can pray if you want. I'm not against it, but there's no abdicating your power in this scenario. It's me versus me. And that's fucking awful and awesome at the same time.
And if I want to cure anything, it's up to me.
Yes. It's up to me. And the work is doable also. It's not impossible. It's not expensive. It's actually free. It's not really time consuming. Everyone can squeeze, hopefully, 20 minutes into their day. Also, it doesn't interrupt other people.
And
So,
it doesn't burden anyone with
no,
any of your problems,
exactly.
because I think the nature of having loved ones in our life, and I know this personally, when I kind of unload on my partner, he feels the need to fix it.
Yes.
Of course, that's being a masculine person and being a fixer. And I've had to say to him multiple times, no, I'm saying this just to get it out. Like, I don't need you. There's nothing
Yeah.
to fix. But for them to understand that, they still want to fix. So I feel this journal speak modality, I need to start it. Not to say I have any chronic pain, but I
Right.
feel like there's probably something that I'll see benefits later that I didn't even know were an issue.
Yeah. And like I was saying to you before we started recording, is I actually physically feel lighter. Don't think the scale will reflect that, but I feel like I have better posture.
Emotional weight.
Yes, it's so significant and it's not to be overlooked, especially like you said, you don't have chronic pain yet. You don't have any chronic yet. 50, you could wake
You can
up
create that in your body pretty quick.
totally. And it can show up in so many different ways. It can also show up in more, let's say, acute ways that aren't necessarily chronic. Obviously, chronic is what brings people to these sorts of things because they're like, I've tried everything, I'm suffering, yada, yada, yada. But like, it can show up as like a
Acne.
headache, acne, tinnitus, blurred vision, like whatever. Like it's when your body is expressing to you, when you are neglecting to express what's inside, like it will find a way to be like, hello. And obviously, with a caveat of make sure you don't have anything physically wrong with you, or
Yeah.
no tumors, no like bacterial infections, et cetera, et cetera. But when medicine is kind of like, there's not much we can do for you, or this is chronic, get ready to live in a wheelchair the rest of your life, or whatever that might be, is like, it's amazing to be able to extend that branch and just say, what about this? And it's funny because another thing that Nicole warns about is that you can have what she calls the symptom imperative, which is your symptoms can actually move around.
And get worse, maybe?
Worse, change, take a new shape. Sometimes when I'm writing, I will have pain shooting up and down my spine.
That's when you know you're hitting the spot.
Quite literally. And it's kind of terrifying, but it's also affirming. So I'm like, okay. And if it gets worse, you know you're doing it right because you know that you're poking the bear and the bear is like, please don't. and it's like a sign to keep
Push
going, which is
harder.
really hard. It's really, yeah, exactly. It's really hard. But I had a lot of different sort of random things pop up. I had my first ever migraine when I started to do this work because I think my body was like, whoa, 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 don't look there. Go into bed and shut the lights off. I mean, that was terrifying. And of course, I like went to the hospital. I thought I had meningitis, for crying out loud. I was like, something is happening. And when they cleared me, I was like, okay, something is
Thank
going
God.
on. Some
Yeah.
sort of symptom imperative is happening here. And I actually had an anxiety attack last summer
Your
in the
first
peak
one?
of, yes, like my first sort of like clinical
A
panic
panic
attack
attack. Yeah.
that lasted for about a week. That was horrible, but
Horrifying.
it's
Yeah.
I mean, it's very hard to do while you're in it. So I feel like journal speaking is also preventative. It's like excavating
Agreed.
the stuff so it doesn't reach a boiling point. But I had enough awareness, even when I was anxious, that I needed to express it. So I was doing my journal speak as much as I could whenever I could muster it. And underneath my anxiety was a mountain of grief. It
From
was,
what? Just life.
yeah, I mean, I had a death in the family last year,
Mm.
and I obviously sort of grieving the way life has been and would be with COVID and everything. I was so sad. And I felt like there was when you have a panic attack, at least when I did, I was like, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And obviously there's a connection to like death, grief, end of life, knowing you're going to die, all these things. And it came back to grief. And I would just sit and weep and weep and weep and weep. And I realized, like, I'm not an anxious person. I'm not, now doomed to a life of anxiety. I'm having a reaction to what's going on inside. And it feels like anxiety, but it's actually something completely actually different. It's deep, deep sadness and, missing someone who's passed and, yeah, sort of grieving life in general. Like, why do we have to say goodbye to people? And what does it mean to know you're going to die? Life is devastating in so many ways. And to just have that in the back of my mind, even though I was so anxious that my body was like, we're going to die, you need to go to the doctor, blah, 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 all these things, I had the awareness to be like, something else is going on. And unlocking that was a tidal wave. It was
I feel like a
massive.
lot of people are afraid to reveal their deepest, darkest shame and guilt and grievances, even to themselves, even if they delete it afterwards anyways. I think people are afraid to go there.
Yeah. And it's sort of like it's a decision you have to make. Do I want to suffer physically or do I want to go there? And you have to be at that point where you're like, fuck this. I can't take another day of pain or lack of energy. I think a lot of people come to this through like chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia or ringing in your ears or burning mouth syndrome and all these crazy things. I don't want to do this anymore. So what's the worst that could happen by like peeling back the curtain?
Your pain needs to be bigger than your fear
Yeah.
to ever do anything about anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, isn't that like how the brain works? It's like the pain pleasure like balance. It's true. So it's funny because so many people aren't really like ready to hear a suggestion like this or a modality like this because they're like, I'm not ready to look at that because I'm not suffering enough to like to necessitate that.
I want to ask you, and just because I know so many people experience this, is how this related to working in the corporate world and leading to burnout.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Burnout is a
it's
big topic right now and for great reasons.
yeah. And I mean, I feel like you can burn out in your life in any realm if you haven't looked at things. And large in part because a lot of people who develop chronic conditions or end up coming to this sort of head in their life, their conditions are forcing them to rest, which the body wants, right? It's, I don't want to go to work today. I don't want to deal with my mother-in-law. I don't want this. I don't want that. So it's best if we just get a migraine, go to bed, and walk the world out. So I think it's really important for people to start to look at what are they dealing with? What's coming up for you? What is the pattern here? What is your body trying to tell you? And it's funny because this is before I started to do all the mind body work, but when I was working at my corporate job here, that's, that's when I'd wake up in the middle of the night crying. I had blurred vision. I couldn't walk up the stairs when I got home from work. And I was like, what's going on? Oh, whatever, fine. Just had a long day. My body was trying to tell me I would get like bladder infections out of the blue. I was taking so many sick days and I was like, well, I don't know what's like, why? And it was because I was so unhappy, but I wasn't expressing it. I wasn't also letting myself express it. Like you said, like people don't want to admit, I don't want to admit to myself, I don't like this job that it took me 8 months to get. My
It feels
first
like
job.
failure.
Yeah, my first job in a foreign country. I should be so blessed to have.
That's what I want to really dig deep in. I should feel blessed for this. I should feel grateful for this. But if you don't, lean into that. Don't feel guilty.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when I realized like the job, I started like, once I started with the journal speak, I started to look back and piece it all together. I was like, oh my God, my body is trying to be like, can we not go to this job? Like, can we just forget about it? Can we go to bed? I mean, the number of sick days was crazy. I had worked a corporate job in Vancouver that I was so much more aligned with previously. I don't think I took one. Actually, no, I took one sick day when I had shingles and that was it. Otherwise, I was going to work no matter what was going on. And I never felt I felt better at work than not even. I was like, oh, my friends are here. It's a great company.
Excited to go.
Totally. Never dreaded a day at that job. And then I had the contrast here and my body was like,
no.
No. So it's
like a toddler, like preventing the mom from leaving the door. And it's like, no, yes. Come back.
Totally. It's trying to protect you, right? Because it's like, this place sucks. It makes us angry, scared, frustrated, like lonely, whatever, fill in the blank here, unappreciated. Why would I let you go there? So it's so interesting. So even people who don't have sort of quote unquote chronic, you don't have to have something crazy going on like fibromyalgia. You could just be like, I get a lot of headaches, or I'm not sleeping well, or again, my vision's a bit blurry, or
I'm stressed. I'm not
exactly.
Even something I'm not excited to go.
Yes. I'm not excited to wake up.
Let me caveat that with, you don't need to feel excited every single day. You actually might just be tired, or you might be going through a period of the job where it's a little more stressful, but if you feel that every single day and things are kind of still normal and nothing out of the ordinary is feeling or happening, your body doesn't lie.
It really doesn't. And I also encourage people, if you don't have a chronic condition, A, bless, and that's amazing, but B, like, let's not let it get there as well. Like, I've recommended this practice to so many people in my life who've expressed curiosity over it. I would never just sort of, force it on people or bring it up out of the blue. But to say this could really keep your health on track and really also give you an edge. Because when you're not projecting, when you're not suppressing, when you're not running this story in your subconscious, when you're not telling yourself these stories, like lying awake, ruminating over everything, like, you're free. And what, like, to do with that? And it's part of the reason why I left my job. I mean, I'd started journaling for a few months and I was like, wait, I am in the driver's seat. And I look back, I realized my body was sending me all the signals that it wasn't working for me. And I said, like, I can't continue to come here. Sure, with the journal speak, I was feeling like I could handle things better because I wasn't piling it on an already overflowing trash can of emotion. But I just said to myself, like, the writing is on the wall.
And
I'm
now
not going to
it's
stay
on the
here.
Computer.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm going to delete it.
Exactly. But for no one to read.
Yeah. Invisible ink on the wall.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, you could also type with like white font. You don't even need to see what you're writing.
Ooh, I love that idea.
Yeah. And I've done that before when I think maybe I was on
because I wouldn't want to go back and read it over.
No. And you certainly don't have to, and almost shouldn't. Yeah. Right.
When do you think people should try this or get a little bit more curious about it? I mean, I've already kind of asked you this, but you don't want to let it get as far as where you were. But someone who's not into journaling or not into self-care at all aren't just going to get on the computer and start typing all their deepest, darkest thoughts. So, I mean, what is a probing question that they can start with to be like, okay, that's a little easier. Start journal speak right away. I mean, I think that the website has some good ways to get started.
Yeah. And there's another website of another woman who cured herself through this modality. I think it's called mytmsjourney.com. And I think I have the link also in my blog post that I wrote about it. But she has great prompts. And it could be like, what's bothering me today? Or what are things that I need to get off my chest? Or it can be like that simple. But I will say, and hopefully this piques the interest of people who aren't suffering chronic pain or chronic condition or whatever, is that now that I'm someone who doesn't identify as someone with chronic pain, so now that I'm more like the average user, this practice to me is more health supportive than anything else I do. Wow. To me, it's more important than exercise, what I eat, even meditation itself, the thing is, you can't meditate if you're running a fucking playlist of negative emotions in the background.
That's why I'm not into meditation. I'm just like, okay, so I'm just going to sit here and just run through the cycle of everything I'm feeling. That doesn't seem productive at all.
No, and I mean, meditation has its benefits, and it over time, obviously, like you kind of work out the knots in your brain. I'd much rather just cut the knot open and then meditate when I feel inspired to and feeling like it's like a relief, not like a rumination. So I think this also like, I actually did get into meditation after I started journal speak because I was like, I felt more like I could access that. I know you're not supposed to have no thoughts in meditation, but I felt like I could access that sort of ease in meditation that before I was like, I couldn't, because I'd be like, well, this hurts, that hurts, blah, blah, blah. I hate this person, whatever happened with that, blah, blah, blah. Like just like the laundry list of just, yeah, who to complain about today in my head or what to complain about today in my head. So like, it's now that I'm someone who doesn't need it for pain management, I still say it's number one because you can't digest your food if your body is inflamed. You can't run 10 kilometers if you are tense in all these ways that are coming from you avoiding listening to what's going on in your heart, in your head, in your soul. And so if you're like, I'm not really like a self-care person or whatever, try it. I freaking dare you. Free yourself of even things you're not even conscious that you're doing. Maybe you're like, oh, this couldn't help with my, I don't know, insert sort of like weird behavior here, but maybe it could. I also think a lot of people self-sabotage. I was just actually thinking about this yesterday. Self-sabotage because of the unconscious thoughts that they have.
100%.
And I mean, that comes up a lot in psychology, but I was like, wait, like the missing link is that it's very rare for someone to say like, but this is how you get rid of those. I mean, this hypnosis, et cetera, fine. But this you can do on your own. There's no dependency model here, which I also think it's kind of a rite of passage in any sort of like self-care, self-development is like reclaiming your power. So even if you just journal speak to reclaim your power and also to save thousands of dollars on therapy. And
that's why I have never went because I think that's a lot of money. And I'm gonna spend a week just like getting to know them. And I'm like, I already know myself. Why can't I just, I feel empowered enough to figure it out on my own. And maybe some people might be like, good luck. But that's why I really resonate with this journal speak.
Yeah. And I'm by no means am I against talk therapy. And like I said, I've been in and out of it. And some people might like also want that in concert with doing their own exploration and need that sort of support, even if it's just because you could pay someone to listen to you and to be like, wow, I can't believe you addressed that in your journal speak. That's so powerful. So I
the
never
validation.
Sure. And I never want to shit on talk therapy, but I will caveat that I feel like I've been through decades of therapy in a year of journaling. And that's coming from someone who's been in therapy.
And some people don't have the financial means, whether they don't have insurance, whether they just don't have that within their budget. Like an hour of therapy is $100. I mean, I'm not in a low financial position by any means, but I don't feel comfortable spending $100 right now on therapy. Like I don't see that where that fits in the budget. And maybe that's where my priorities are, but I don't see it.
Yeah. And I mean, now I actually just remembered, I kind of forgot about this, that on my journey when I was really ill, I had my pain and a bunch of other things going on, I went to a therapist who specialized in people who had chronic pain. And much like a lot of the other practitioners in the Western model, it was like chronic pain management. And I fucking hate that term.
I don't want this anymore. I don't want to manage it. Like, let's get rid of it.
Let's fire this employee. I don't want to manage that.
Yeah.
So, and that was really interesting because again, you're spending like hundreds of dollars an hour for someone to be like, how do we relate to this? And can we accept it? And blah, blah, blah. And can we talk about things and just ruminate? And again, no disrespect. And I think therapy can really change people's lives because it's the first time they're being heard. But especially as someone, I'm like, I've read every self-help book. I probably know more about psychology than half these therapists. No offense. And, I've tried everything. I've gone to all the professionals. I've worked on myself. I'm not like shy to sort of like critique who I am and, how I'm flawed and whatnot. I don't want to talk about my problems for 20 years. I want to release them and elevate.
That's powerful.
It's insane. And the thing is, with this, nothing to lose. So you might say, I don't want to spend $100 on a therapist. Great. Give something a shot that you can do entirely on your own, risk-free for the most part. If anything, like any physical symptoms come up, you know that it's working. It's not like, hey, counterindication. So, I mean, nothing to lose. And again, you can do it in concert with other things that you're doing. You can still go to acupuncture, go to Reiki, whatever, like whatever.
Because it's not an extra cost. Like you don't have to pick one or the other.
No. And I find like I prioritize it over almost everything else.
And that wasn't who you were 5 years ago.
No. I mean, I was a girl. I was like working out all the time and then going to like 800 different practitioners and just spending my money and crying myself to sleep and
very
just
conscious about what you were eating.
Yeah. I mean, okay, this is another fun one. And I wrote about in the blog post is that I had heard Nicole mention on one of her podcasts that food sensitivities can start to go away. And I was like, and that plants a seed of belief. So I'm like, okay,
and
I've been writing.
Probably prove it. Let's see.
100%. I was like, I'm the perfect like N=1 experiment because I've been through quite the ringer with like food, and a lot of these chronic conditions will say like, go low, blah, 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 cut out this. I mean, I've done it, I've done it all, and I've been on a freaking roller coaster. And luckily, like I had come to a place where I was like, had a pretty varied diet, and I felt like I was like, okay, this is fine. And I was doing the journal speak.
Well, I've always been inspired by your eating. Always.
Oh, thank you. Let's caveat that there was definitely a disorder in the middle of that, but that's not, I'm out of the woods now. But anyways, so I was like, this is interesting. One thing I was still afraid of is what I will say, not sensitive to, is gluten. Because even if you are not avoiding it for a health reason, it's still, like I ate a pizza last night, I'm so bad. Or like gluten is bad for everyone, but some people can just tolerate it not, or whatever. There's all this sort of like literature around it and dogma around it. So I was like, yeah, of course I should avoid gluten for the rest of my life. Like I'm sensitive to it. It causes this, blah, 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 whatever. And once I started doing the journal speak, I was like, fuck it, girl, let's go there. And I would eat like a whole pizza. And I said to myself, I was like, you're not going to freak out. You're fine. If you have pain, it's coming from somewhere else. Because previously my pattern would be like, eat gluten, feel some pains almost instantly. There's no way in hell.
And affirm to yourself, it's gluten.
Exactly. And there's no way in hell that like you eat a piece of pizza with gluten and then your back starts to hurt. Like that's absurd. That is not
a little too instant.
Exactly. Quite literally. So I would eat a pizza and I would be like, okay, I'm not going to let myself freak out. I'm going to go to bed. I'm just going to fall asleep because that's the easiest way to just kind of skip over the drama. Wake up the next day, feel like $1 million.
And thinking, oh, that pizza was so good.
Totally. And you know what? I was like, that's another definition of being free. It's not having fears that you're like plugged into. It's like these stories that you're like repeating to yourself and to other people also. Like it's contagious to be like, gluten is bad for you. I mean, I was on that train for so long. I almost want to send a mass message. Sorry to everyone who I got to go gluten free.
Yeah, seriously. You're like, come back.
Totally. And my body has loved the freedom. It's so different. It's like when the body exists in a place where it's not, looking around the corner being like, okay, what's going to happen is this, or gluten is bad, or, oh, how dare we, or whatever. Its processes work so beautifully. It's actually just like astonishing. And I'm not saying that other people's food sensitivities are imaginary or that they even are a mind body.
Try something new.
Of course. And if you're
try on the idea that
yes,
this ingredient isn't bad for once.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of spiritual teachers talk about like mind over matter and that it is whatever you make it to be. And I say yes. And you can't be in that place until you've cleared out the junk that's blocking you from accessing that level of sort of like empowerment and inspiration and understanding. I mean, you could have said that to me 5 years ago and I'm like, cool. But like when I eat a pizza, my back starts to hurt. So
like
whatever.
I have physical proof. Exactly.
And the pain, I will also like emphasize the pain for any and everyone. It's real. Like I've lived it. I felt like someone was electrocuting me. I felt like there was a fire, a match lit to my back at all times. Like it's not imaginary. It's not a hallucination. It's not an exaggeration. I know how
you've been
real
there
it
for
is.
years and years.
100%. And I cannot believe that this information is not more widely available. I mean, again, miracle that I'm one of the, I don't know if it's thousands or millions now of people on the planet, small percentage who knows that this is available. It's mind blowing. It's paradigm shifting. It's world changing.
I mean, just your world changing. That's all that matters. And if something as simple as writing for 20 minutes and deleting it afterwards solves even one issue for one person, pretty beautiful.
Right. And especially I think about all the people who are suffering, and myself included, but like the people who are suffering who have huge dreams, who could be the next Mother Teresa, you name it, but are confined to their condition, or like their life is made so small. I mean, you shrink your life. You're like, I can't say yes to this. I can't commit to that. You're always pre-grieving, pre-planning, pre-strategizing, packing painkiller, whatever.
It's
And
exhausting.
totally. And it just depletes your life force. And that, yeah, exactly. One person, one symptom gone. Like it could literally change the consciousness of the planet.
Wow, we're going to bankrupt a lot of physicians.
Thanks.
Good.
No, I mean,
but not.
let's be honest. Chronic conditions cost the first world and the rest of the world, modern healthcare system, so much money. And there's no way that we can continue to support that.
Mm-hmm.
It's necessary to have another alternative, because then also we can focus Western progressive medicine on things that aren't related to emotional suppression. So we can shrink tumors and fight things that right now we're spending our resources over,
trying to find a cure, and there's no cure, and there's a reason why there's not a cure.
Exactly.
Like, guys, the writing on the wall, read it.
100%, or type it, or speak
Yeah.
it. 100%.
Oh,
It's
my
so
Lord.
true. So I feel like there's space, like it's not meant to bankrupt even like the chiropractors of the world or the acupuncturists.
I think there's room for everyone.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's nothing like
but
now.
in conjunction with each other.
Exactly. And there's nothing like it. Like now, like I can go for a massage
Mhm.
and enjoy it and not be like, this needs to fix me. And that is a whole other ball game. That is a whole other way of existing.
It feels like more spa than a chiropractor.
100%. And that we can start to actually engage with these other modalities, like in a very like loving way. Cause I think every time I showed up at a practitioner before, a physio, whatever, I'm like, fix me. You have to fix me. I'm
in like a desperate energy. Yeah.
So true. And it's like, to turn that around and be like, I choose to get a massage, or, oh, love acupuncture, like just to feel, a shift in my energy, instead of always focusing on the pain. And also, again, giving your power away and being like, and then when it not work out, being like, well, I wasted this money and and it's never going to work. And that's just more evidence that I'm broken and this is never going to end. And so, yeah, I don't want to bankrupt anyone. I just want to elevate the energy with which we interact with each other as well.
Yeah.
I want us to
give
go to
more options.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also, I can't speak for medical professionals, but I know the doctors I did see, they felt horribly that they couldn't help me, or they just felt sad. I'm so sorry. There's not much we can do. Maybe try this medication. If it doesn't work, like, we've exhausted all of our options. And that's not fun for them either. Like maybe sometimes it might seem like they're just like, oh, they're very dismissive and they don't care, but it's like, they're human too.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's a failure to not be able to help someone to improve their quality of life or to cure what their ailment is. And I can imagine that also weighs on the medical professionals. Of course it would. It's crazy. And that this has all come to a head in the last year, that like, what a shift. Just, I put on a new pair of glasses. It's crazy because it extends past my own story. It extends into like also when people are like, well, I've had these like chronic migraines, and I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Or even for me, I might get a twinge here or a pang there. And I'm like, what's going on in my life that I'm not looking at? And it's this amazing way to interact with the world. And just, I feel like it evolves over time. And even like, I don't want people to think too that it's necessarily has to be the journaling. I think 99% of people should start there, whether it's, again, typed or written, or you could also speak it like a voice note type thing, or just speak out loud. I mean, you could do it when you're like in your car or something, when there's no one listening. But another thing that I've been more conscious of recently is if I'm feeling something, I'm going to sit and I'm going to feel it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make it tomorrow's journaling project. I'm going to deal with it right now. And the perfect example is in February, I failed my Swedish driving road test.
I failed my Canadian one at 16, so I feel you.
Yeah, I failed
so
my first
shame.
Canadian. Yeah, I know. So, perfect word, shame. I failed it. I literally was transported back in time to when I was 17 and failed my first test in Canada. And I wailed. I was making like mammal noises. Like it was ugly. And I was a 2-hour walk from my house, and I walked home because I was like, this gives me the space. I'm going to walk beside the highway. No one can see me. Who
You
the fuck is?
did?
I live in a foreign country, so no one knows who I am anyways. And I
Yeah.
just wept and I screamed and I yelled and I was like saying all the things. I phoned a friend and was like, I knew she could handle it. And I just said, I just need to let it out. And I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and talked about my experience when I was 17 and talked about this. And oh my God, I'm in Sweden and I'm overwhelmed. And I'm like, what am I doing here? And I'm a failure. Hours. And I emptied and I emptied and I emptied. And I shed that. And when I went for my second road test a few weeks ago, I nailed it. And even to the point where when I drove back up to the end of the test, I said to myself, if I fail, that's okay. I was a different person. I showed up so differently. I related to the world in an entirely new way because I had unplugged from that drama, from that story, from that lowercase t trauma from when I was 17.
Over 10 years ago.
Exactly. Thinking, oh, I've had 10 years experience of driving. Like I'm not 17 anymore.
I'm a shoo-in.
Totally. To realizing, no, that hurt. And I never expressed it. Because, when you're 17, you kind of have to suck it up and get ready for your next test. There's no time to waste.
And you don't tell anyone.
No. God, no.
God, no.
God, no. So now I'm also not experimenting, but really leaning into feeling things when they come up to completion and feeling like, is it done? Nope. Okay, keep crying. Is it done? Okay, keep going there. And that's something that I've been not working on, but getting help and assistance from my partner with, is that he knows if I'm upset to just say, is that all? Is there more? Is there more? And, kind of just encourage me as if I was throwing up, kind of rub on the back, let it out, let it out, let it out, and not fix, and just let me complete the process. And it's been game changing, especially for our relationship too, because then he understands what his role is. He knows it's not personal. He knows
he's not trying to fix it.
Exactly.
That's the big one.
Yeah, because it can't be fixed. It just needs to be released.
Yes. I mean, there's a reason why it feels so good to get a glass of wine with a girlfriend and just complain. And
yes.
I love it. It feels so good.
And I do think, like you said, like it's often the things that we wouldn't even say to a best friend that will come out and that we do need to express. But as we progress and we feel like we've got most of the demons out the door, when it's these daily annoyances, of course you can release it with a girlfriend. You could even say if they know kind of what's up with
what you've learned after releasing it.
Yeah. Or even like in the moment, if you're like, okay, I don't have time to sit down for 20 minutes with my journal. I'm like in this situation or I'm at a dinner party.
I'm at work right now.
You can pull a friend aside and be like, okay, journal speak one sec. Fuck that person or whatever. You can just kind of happen in real time and just release it so it's not sitting with you. And if it's someone who you feel like can handle that, I can hold space and understand to the function of just you getting it out, not needing to be fixed, not needing to really like, let's explore this. No, let's just release it.
Because there's nothing, even if you just need to release it, there's sometimes something that feels so good, even if you don't really feel this way, of just being like, fuck that person.
Mm-hmm. I know, that's such a good point. And what I want to highlight is I think there are ways that we almost like journal speak in life that we haven't put a label. Like it's the gossip.
Like what? Like the gossiping, yeah.
The bitching with the girlfriend, I don't know. A lot of people, I think, get
the nice thing about bitching with girlfriends, as women, maybe it's the stereotypical like masculine versus feminine, but a lot of women like don't plan on trying to fix it. They're going to feed into it and it gets you that validation. So I agree. There's a lot of similarities.
Definitely. And I think as friends, we can, even without sort of introducing our friends to this work, because again, it's not for it's not for everyone at face value, but saying like, if they're upset or whatever, it's like, the things that Ollie does with me, is there more? Tell me more. I feel like you're not telling me something, or I feel like you need to cry. Is that a tear I see? And like really helping people to open the gates and to let it out and not saying, suck it up, or you can do this, or you're fine. It's going to be okay. All the wrong things to say when you're trying to let someone emote. Obviously, there's a time and place for this. Don't do it in the grocery store, maybe. Don't do it maybe in a high stress driving situation, but
maybe not at work.
Yeah, maybe not at work. But finding that the space together, and I think like that sort of verbiage, it doesn't have to be like journal speak informed. It could just be like, these small ways you can kind of implant it into your relationships and just, like kind of like, but tell me how you really feel.
Sarah, to start concluding it out, like I said, we can talk all day. Any final last words of advice or hope for someone
Mm.
who feels very repressed in their emotions or going through burnout or simply going through a really tough time in their life?
I mean, if my life is nothing like I ever could have imagined, the same applies to any and everyone. There's nothing special about me. I didn't get struck by lightning. I'm not the chosen one. And so if it can happen for me, sure as hell can happen for others. And that the only way out is through. There is no way to avoid this stuff and to get well at the same time. It's like running in opposite directions. And there's so many resources out there too. It's like I am the tip of the iceberg as well. Like there are amazing stories, and whether you get it through Nicole's work or some of these sort of other offshoots, there's a really great YouTube channel called Pain Free You by a man who's overcome his pain. And he has a very direct communication style, which I think also really appeals to maybe people who aren't as in the field woo-woo about things. So there's so many resources out there, and you just have to find that little avenue that makes you believe, and the belief will catapult you into what's possible. And it's basically the takeaway start today.
I love that. Sarah, I said this because I only asked you to jump on earlier this week. And as I was sending you that text, I'm like, please say yes, please say yes, please say yes. Because I knew you would have so much value to share. And I knew the conversation would just be so genuine and real and less planned and no motive behind it. Because at the end of the day, like, you have nothing to lose and you're not trying to force anything on anyone. This is not your practice or modality. This is just something that's worked for you. The only other thing I would say is if someone just wants to come to you personally and gain more from you, where can they find you?
Yes. So I have sarahInstockholm.com, and that's Sarah with an H. And I also had an Instagram handle at Sarah in Stockholm. But if you go to my page, you'll see I have no posts because I have a complicated relationship with social media. But if you shoot me a message there, I will see it. So I'm still working on too, like how, and if I want people to be in touch directly, what that would look like. I mean, again, like you said, this is not my modality. I have nothing to gain or to lose by sharing it. So I'm just happy to shine a light for people. And I mean, I love chatting with people. I actually made a friend through Nicole's podcast. I posted in the Facebook group or something, and she's from Sweden and she lives abroad, and we've been emailing. We've become like pen pals. It's so beautiful. And I mean, community is a huge part of a happy, healthy life. And especially when you're going through something that feels like uncharted territory, I really encourage people to find like-minded people, whether it's through Facebook groups, etc., and just reach out. I'm always happy to chat.
Sarah, I'm so grateful for our friendship. And we're not the type of friends that talk every day, but when we do, it's for hours like this. And I always said we need to start recording our conversations. And I'm so glad we did this time.
It's the first of many, I hope.
I know, I agree. So to conclude it here, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, come anytime. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
Love you, Janelle.
Love you.